Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Melissa Boggs. She is a professional speaker who speaks on innovation, creativity, and change. She indeed is quite creative as she does her keynote on roller skates. Yes, you heard that right. I hope she I hope she wears a helmet just in case. But since she's a speaker, I'm sure she has advice on marketing, sales, pricing, and all those other speaker related topics. So let's get to getting some answers. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Melissa.
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me.
So when it comes to the speaking that you do, Melissa, how did you come across the topic that you eventually that you speak on?
So funny that you ask. I am also a bit of a geek. I grew up professionally in the tech industry on the people side of tech. So for those familiar with agile software development, I came up through that side of the tech business through being a scrum master, then an agile coach, then eventually sort of an organizational coach, and then the co-CEO of Scrum Alliance. And there was a theme throughout all of that, through all of my coaching, through all of my work in the tech side of the world. And that theme was rejecting the status quo, taking a big idea that you have and going forward with it, even if it was not in the norm, for the day. So if you look back at the origins of the agile movement, it was all about sort of rebelling against traditional project management and having a closer connection to customers. And so I initially started talking about agile topics at conferences way back in 2016. Very, tactical day-to-day type of topics to help other scrum masters or help their managers in some cases to understand what we do in the agile space. And as I started to move toward bigger stages, I did a lot of leadership topics. And this one just kept coming up, which was this notion that you have this big idea, you want to try it, but you're scared. And how, like, our brains are wired that way. That's how our brains are supposed to work, is to keep us protected from, you know, uh, danger, or what our brains perceive as danger. So that eventually led to me creating my current flagship keynote, which is From Cautious to Courageous. And that is the one I deliver on roller skates.
What made you decide to do it on roller skates?
So the premise of the talk is, courage and courage in creativity. And when I came back to roller skating when I was 40 years old, after being away for 20 years, and I was trying to learn all of these new things. I came back and was able to, it's like riding a bike. Like, I was able to skate around the rink, but I wanted to learn rhythmic skating, artistic skating, these things that are more like dance. And as I was trying to attempt these things, I was sort of telling myself the same things that I was telling my leaders when I was coaching them. How do you get curious about this first? If you're terrified to do it, then how do you just ask questions? Like, get your brain out of fear and just into curiosity. That part, that's all you have to do. And I was like telling myself these things. And over time, I just started to see this like beautiful braiding of my personal passion and my professional passion, and bringing those two together to create a really memorable hour for people that helps them to not only remember what I said, but be able to integrate it throughout the hour. So yeah, if you had told me, I don't know, 5 years ago that this would be what I was doing, I would have never believed you. But it is so much fun. And uh, from what I hear from the feedback, the impact is huge.
When it comes to your speaking business, what type of services do you provide?
So I'm primarily a keynote speaker, but I also do MC work. I also do workshop design, whether that's let me help you design your workshop and you deliver it, or we'll, design it together and I will facilitate for you. Um, And then I have some productized workshops related to my keynote. Those I'm still in development, trying to nail those down a little bit better.
Okay. For the people who are listening or watching this conversation, Melissa, what and then they have these aspirations to become a professional speaker. What do they need to have in place to actually put themselves out there as a professional speaker?
Sure. First things first is just discover what it is that you love speaking about. Because especially when you have like a primary talk that you do over and over and over again, it might be the 57th time for you, but it is the first time for the people in the audience. So you have to love what you are speaking about and you have to believe in it. And that's the most woo-woo part. Besides that, you need systems in place. You need, even if it's just yourself, you don't have to have this whole team, but you need systems for booking business, whether that is, email outreach systems, you need assets in place like your website and a one sheet and a media kit in general. But there's a certain amount of structure that you need to have in order to be able to confidently say to planners, I have what you need, and here's the proof. And I can help with, your event goals or the problems that you're trying to solve. So a talk that you love or more, one or more talks that you love, systems in place, the assets that you need, the proof, and then, just some amount of sustainability for yourself. So you need to know personally, what is it? What are my goals? Like, what is it that I need to book in order to be comfortable launching into being a full-time speaker? I need this much a month or I need this much a quarter, but also what is the impact that you want to have? Because you can't be sustainable just on money. Kind of ties back to the first one. Like, are your goals to impact a certain industry? Are your goals to just get the message in front of as many people as you possibly can? But just knowing what it is, the impact that you want to have in the world. Because again, when you've done the talk for the 57th time in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, how do you keep it fresh and make sure that you still can sustain the level of energy and the level of excitement that you have for the message that you're bringing?
You mentioned the media kit. What's in a media kit?
I think this varies from person to, from person to person, but generally speaking, we have a speaker reel, 3 to 5 minutes of you actually being on stage. We have a one sheet, which is like it sounds, a one-page document that describes a bit about you and a bit about what you offer. So if you have, like my current one sheet just has this one talk on it. But I've certainly seen other people where their one sheet might say, speaks on these 4 topics or 4 categories of topics. Either is fine. I'm just really focused on my one right now. It can include headshots for them to use when they're, posting about you on their website if you're booked with a conference. That way they don't have to reach out to you every time they need something like that. For the same reason, it can include your bio. And then some people have things like little postcards, like little similar to your one sheet, which is little postcards included in their media kit. I'm probably forgetting something, but essentially it is a collection of assets for the planner that you're either reaching out to because you want to book with them or you have booked with them and you're kind of giving them everything at their fingertips.
How do you market yourself as a speaker?
Same thing. I'll start with sort of your media kit. Like, I think I started marketing myself almost too soon. And by that, I mean, I was doing email outreach before I had a really great reel, before I had a one sheet that I was really proud of. And while I would get the occasional response, I did book from time to time. It is really hard for a planner to have confidence in booking someone if they don't have those kind of assets, because those are standard across the industry. Once I had those in place, and then I started reaching out. I have a pattern of doing email outreach. I have a really strong website that has all of my information on it. That's when I started getting responses. Um, the other thing is I cannot emphasize enough video. So my shift from being a breakout speaker at conferences where I wasn't getting paid, but I got to go to the conference for free, my shift from that into being a keynote speaker where generally you get paid happened during COVID. And so at the beginning, my speaker reel was all virtual. Like it was all online, which is great, especially at the time. That's what people were looking for. But as we emerged out of COVID, I absolutely needed a new reel. And especially when I started doing this new talk, I needed proof. I needed to instill confidence in people that I wasn't going to fall on stage in my roller skates. That it's interesting and fun and not like, what is she doing on roller skates? And so I cannot emphasize video enough. Every time I talk to a new speaker, I tell them it doesn't matter if it is your best friend in the audience taking video on their iPhone. Get video of yourself every time that you are on the stage, every single time. Because the compilation of those things is what gives planners confidence that you are a good speaker, that you are a professional speaker, and that you care enough to get video of yourself.
When it comes to the speaking gigs that you get, Melissa, do most of them come from referral, word of mouth, prospecting? How do they come?
It's a great question. It's a bit of a mix. As I mentioned, I do cold email outreach to target audiences. So that's one way. Definitely referrals either from other speakers, or I'm a massive fan. I hope it's okay to plug a product for a second, but I'm a massive fan of Talkadot. Talkadot is a tool that allows you to collect feedback during or at the end of your talk, but also to collect referrals or people in the audience who want to book you. And that has been invaluable to me for both sides of it. Like the feedback's great. I learn a lot about what people like or don't like about my talk. But then obviously the referrals and the booking leads are invaluable because they are from people who just saw you talk. You're not just like reaching out randomly. So generally those are really high quality referrals. But I'd say those are the primary means. And then also, I have the privilege of having been in the agile world for a long time. So I have referrals that come in that way, even for non-agile conferences, but people who, I've been kind of grown up professionally with, who refer me to conferences.
Wonderful. Another question I had has to do, well, actually, you mentioned cold email outreach. So there's instances in which you'll reach out to someone and then you don't hear anything. How do you handle following up with people?
So I heard a statistic, actually from the guys over at SpeakerFlow, that on average, it takes 7 touch points to get a cold email prospect to actually respond to you. And at the beginning of that conversation with them, I was like, I don't know. I feel like by the third or fourth time, if they're not responding to me, they're not interested. And just yesterday, I had someone respond to my 6th reach out to them. And so I think one of the best things to do is sort of develop a pattern of those emails, and put thought into it. Go, okay, what does the first one look like? What does the second one, third one, fourth one, etc. And it might be that you have a couple different sets of those, depending on the industry or depending on even if it's cold email, like your reputation or your knowability in that particular industry. But regardless, having a set of those that you just, you send the first email, and then for me, I use a CRM, and I set a task for myself. 3 days from now, I'm going to send a follow-up email if I don't hear from them. And I just do that, 3 to 5 days apart. And there does come a point where like your final email, a rel Moody at Talkadout calls it the breakup email, where you're basically like, I haven't, I haven't heard from you, and that's okay. This might not be a good time, but I'm going to stop bothering you now. And so, you send that final one and kind of close it out. I have also had experiences where I've done that, and then a year and a half later, that same person reached out to me. So don't pester people into the ground, but do remember that people's inboxes get really full, and that it's not always a reflection of their desire to talk to you. Sometimes it is, but it's not always. And that persistence sometimes pays off.
Yeah. I mean, once I started my own thing, I became a lot more mindful about responding to people. Back when I was an employee, I might have just brushed the email off, but now that I'm in the other seat, I recognize how people want an answer either way, a yes or a no. Obviously, they prefer a yes, but the next best answer is a no because at least it's
Yeah.
an answer as opposed to kind of figuring out, well, what should I do now? I have no answer. So yeah, I fully agree with what you're saying. You
Yeah,
know,
I get excited with the no's. I mean, it sounds weird, but it sounds weird to anyone who's not done email outreach. But you get excited about the no because you're like, at least I can take you off my list. Like, at least my list is sort of, refining. And so yeah, it's funny.
when it comes to the services that you provide with your speaking business, Melissa, how do you go about pricing those services?
Ooh, great question. I think this is something that almost everyone struggles with, especially in the beginning. I, gosh, I cannot remember the name of it right now, but I will give it to you later if you want to put it in the notes. But there's a book that I read about value-based pricing, and that might even be the name of the book. But it talks about, not pricing your time and not pricing your output, but rather pricing at the outcome that you expect people to get from what it is that you deliver as a service provider. And so that takes like an extra couple of steps, to say, okay, which are very healthy, good steps to do anyway. What are the outcomes that I expect people to get from my keynote or from my workshop or from, my coaching? And what is a reasonable amount of money that I can charge that aligns with that value that I'm providing? And that is hard because there's definitely an amount of like self-worth that you have to have in order to, put a price tag on that outcome. But I think the process of determining the outcome is, one, valuable to you and yourself. And then two, you then are able to say, here is the price, but here is why. Because the ROI that you are gonna have as a customer is like, 10x that or whatever it might be. But that book was really helpful. I will again make sure I get it to you in the author's name to put in the notes if you'd like. But it had to do with pricing based on the value you deliver and not the time that you spent. I think the number one thing that we forget as speakers is that we're not charging for that hour or that 4 hours or for that 8 hours. We're charging for the amount of time and experience that it took for us to be able to get up and guide people to those outcomes. So that 1 hour is just the tip of the iceberg of what they're receiving from you.
I suspect that with a lot of people who are just starting out in being speakers, they may do a number of engagements for free. In the event that they do so, what should they ask event organizers in exchange for doing the presentation?
Love it. Always ask for video, even if you are getting paid. I go back to my, rant a few minutes ago. Video, 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 but especially if you're doing it for free, asking for video, asking for testimonials, especially in your early days. Just saying to them like, I'm happy to I actually never use the word free. I just say I'm happy to do this pro bono. But I would love at the end, if you're happy with my work, to provide me with, a video or a written testimonial. And generally they're happy to do that. And then there are other things of value. I always talk about that with folks in the negotiation phase, which is, there of course is the exchange of cash, if you will, or the exchange of monies. But there's so much value in other things as well. Like, are they willing to let you send an email to their attendee list? Even if they can't give you the list, that's fine. But can you provide them with an email that they can send to all the attendees? That might lead to spinoff work for you. So you can get really creative. I've heard some really interesting things that that speakers. Oh, one more is like, do you know other conference organizers that you would be willing to introduce me to, if you're happy with my work after the conference?
Is this something that you get memorialized in an agreement, or is this something that you just ask them for and with the hope that they actually do it?
I generally put it in the contract. Yeah. I mean, I talk about it with them first, of course, like verbally, but then I will put whatever it is that we've agreed upon in the contract. And that is super important to do. Um, I do know that, like, early on when you're doing conferences for free, there might not be some big legal contract. In that case, I would at least put it in an email and ask them to respond, in the affirmative and say, yes, this is what we've agreed to. But if it's not in writing, it's not an agreement. Like, I've had that happen too, where it was a gentleman's agreement, quote unquote. And then suddenly, they forgot, or someone else took over that part of the planning and didn't know you agreed. And so always get it in writing for sure.
Indeed. For the people who are watching and listening, Melissa, they may think that to make it or to get started as a professional speaker, it's a good idea to spend money in speaker programs, whether that's to become a better speaker or to build a better speaker business. What are your thoughts on these types of programs, and what should people expect from them?
I did them, definitely. I definitely did a couple of different programs. The thing that I would say about the programs, I mean, there are some fantastic speakers or speaking business folks out there who have these programs. In my experience, it was all about timing. Making sure that when you go to the table for these programs, that you have whatever it is that that program is going to refine. So if it is, I'm going to this program to be a better speaker, then have a talk in mind. Even if it's not written, like, have something that you want to work on in that program. Don't just come with a blank slate. There was a particular program that I did, gosh, probably 3 years ago now, that was very valuable and I enjoyed it. I wish I could go back and do that same program with the talk that I'm doing now, because I think I would have gotten so much out of it. Because when I went through it, I was sort of a jack of all trades, and I had a couple leadership talks and I had this and that and the other, right? And so it wasn't refined. And if I could go back now, and maybe I will one day, and go through that same program, but with this one talk, I think I would have gotten so much more value out of that time. So I would never say don't do them, but I would definitely say make sure you're ready and that you have something to work on in the program. And I would say also just look at reviews, talk to other people who have been through those programs. I think all of them have the best of intentions, but talking to people who have been through it, who might say what I said, right? Yes, do that program, but wait and do it when you've got XYZ. So yeah, they're good. It's just timing.
So I'm sure there are people who are listening or watching this conversation, Melissa, and they're really gung-ho about becoming a professional speaker. Perhaps the advice that one would give is, well, make it a side business while you still have your current job. How do you balance having a job and a speaking business?
I think it takes a lot of communication with your current employer. I would say that I would not try to make this like a side business that you don't talk to your boss about, because it's a very visible business. So I currently do have a day job, and as I went into this job, had many I would say as many as 3 conversations with my prospective at the time employer and said, these are my goals. I want to do this, this, and this with my speaking business. I need to know how you feel about that, and I need to know what my boundaries are. And they were wonderful. They still are wonderful. And so, to a lot of employers, this is actually a plus. It brings credibility, it brings, positive recognition to their company, even if you're not like wearing the company shirt, but if people see you speak and then they go on LinkedIn and see that you work for this company, it's only good for the company. So I would say first, like communication, because you are, as you start to book, going to have to be away for a minute here or there, if it's not local. And then the second thing I would say is that, you just have to create those systems that I talked about early on in such a way that is respectful of your current employer, but also still consistent, or you'll never get out of where you are. You'll just sort of be in this cycle of like trying a little bit and not actually getting anywhere. But those systems are super important. There's so much that can be automated in, email outreach and CRM and all of that, that if you create those systems, then you're not really taking away from your day job. You're just keeping the machine moving in the background while you're working toward those goals.
So there may very well be people listening or watching this conversation, and they're thinking, I've been doing the speaking business part-time or as a side hustle for a while. I really want to go all in on it and make it my full-time thing. What do you think those people should have in place before they leave their jobs and become full-time speakers?
I think this is very personal for sure. It has to do with each individual person's finances, for one. I would say first, those systems that we talked about, like you don't want to be spending the time when you don't have a day job that's bringing in a salary. That's not the time that you want to be going, I wonder if I should do email outreach. Get those things in place first. And then financially, again, it's so personal, but it's, what amount of money do you need to have in savings to be comfortable? And then what amount do you need booked in the coming, 2 to 4 quarters to bring you to a level of comfortability that like I can pay my bills for these 2 to 4 quarters, whatever it might be, while you're going to continue trying to book beyond that, right? But it's hard to really say like what is that comfortability for each person, because we all have different obligations and things. Yeah.
All right. This has been a great conversation, Melissa. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
I am super easy to find at melissaboggs.com, and you can email me at melissa@melissaboggs.com. I'm also super reachable on LinkedIn. So yeah, reach out.
Excellent. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, Neil.